My wife and I are an international couple for Russia and America, and we traveled the world together for 5 years before we got married. We showed this video to our friends and family before our wedding, and it was the first time we've ever told our entire story. I quit my office job in 2019 because I was sick of it, and I went traveling. Only 3 days later, I realized I wasn't going home anytime soon. And I met Nastya only a few months after that.
I had already been traveling the world as a broke backpacker for 3 years when I met Thomas. I was tired and I was burned out. All I wanted was to fly back home, but Thomas had other ideas.
I'd read this old James Bond novel, From Russia with Love, and I met Nastya on the couch surfing app Hangout feature, which is basically to make friends, while we were in Greece, and somehow I convinced her to hang out with me. I remember I asked her how she was able to travel for so long, and all she said was, "I'm lucky." But I was so interested in this mysterious Russian girl. She had so much confidence, and she laughed at everything I said, but she also seemed really bored at the same time. I asked her where she was going, and it really didn't matter what she had said. I was gonna tell her, "That's where I'm going too."
I immediately saw that Thomas was trying to flirt, but I didn't want to give him any hope. When you travel long enough, you meet a lot of people, and you get used to saying bye to them the next day. But he was so persistent. He bought us train tickets to travel across Greece together.
I wasn't about to let her get away. From the very beginning, she was pushing me away so hard. I remember we were at some ancient ruins, and I tried to put my arm around her, and she shoved me away and said, "Just don't."
Do you know how many guys tried this before you?
Well, she laughed at almost everything I said. And it was only years later that I found out she didn't understand 50% of what I was saying because she didn't know that much English at the time. After days of trying really hard, there was a full moon out at night, and after a few bottles of wine, I got her to give me a little kiss. But only the tiniest kiss, and then she started pushing me away again. She said, "Thomas, there's a line." But lines are for crossing. I never tried so hard in all my life to make a girl like me, and I got no more kisses. She made so many jokes, mostly about my precious America, which made me so mad. And after spending 24 hours a day together, she was pushing back harder than ever. I couldn't believe it. We got in a big argument at some point, and I was sure it was over. There's no way it could have gotten better from there. I left angry and went to buy a beer, but I left something in the room, and when I went back, we made up.
I was sure I would leave the next day. I could not let myself get attached to him. All I wanted was to leave nicely and not to offend him. But after they parted, I realized I missed him.
She told me later it's because of something her mom once said, that it's not the person you want to be with, but the person you can't be without. And from there, our love blossomed. But it still wasn't easy.
We spent the 2 weeks in Greece together 24/7 and had the most excellent time.
But in the end, I took her to the airport. She looked at me, said, "Okay, bye, Thomas," and then left as cold as possible. I flew alone to Turkey, and I was so sad the romance was over.
But there was this thing in Turkey that I really wanted to do. It's called the Lycian Way. And since Thomas already was in Turkey, I texted him that I could join him hiking.
So she flew to meet me only 5 days after we'd separated, and we went on one of the most epic hikes in the world. Between hiking and hitchhiking, we went over 540 kilometers across ancient Roman ruins, some of the most beautiful beaches, and we really started to fall in love. But then, after 7 days, she said goodbye again and left.
I already had tickets booked to Colombia before I even met Thomas, and I wanted to make my dream of traveling across Latin America alone come true.
I thought about following her, but then again, if she decided that she didn't like me that much, it would be really dumb to fly across the world. So for the next few months, I thought about her a lot, and we kept talking in WhatsApp. One night, I texted her that I'd made a wish, and she responded that she had also. We didn't text each other what our wishes were, but I knew in that moment that we had the same wish, to see each other again.
But I got really sick in Colombia, and after seeing many doctors and getting worse, Thomas convinced me that I needed to go home. I had a layover in Mexico, and my fever was so high I couldn't figure out how to fill the form. I almost passed out, and they gave me steroid shots. I felt great until I got to Russia, and then I felt even worse. When the doctors heard I came from Latin America, they treated me like I might have had a zombie virus, and they put me in quarantine all alone.
That was great for me though, because she texted me a lot lot. Even if Russian hospitals do look like they're out of a horror movie, they did take care of her and she got better. And before they even let her out of the hospital, she texted me asking if we should meet.
I always wanted to go to Nepal and hike the Annapurna Circuit, a 12-day trek over 5,416 meters high.
That's almost 18,000 feet if you're American. Of course, I said, why not? And about 5 seconds after we met at the airport, I asked her to be my girlfriend. I planned it that way so she wouldn't have any time to think about it. And then we had one of the most epic adventures of our life. There's no way to describe how exhausted you get on a hike that long. Plus, we were so high in altitude that I was literally having panic attacks at some point. But we made it over the top, and just after that, she told me, I love you, for the first time. Then she asked me what I wanted to do after that. Should we keep traveling across Asia? Which was my dream. I really wanted to go to Southeast Asia. But I realized to stay together, we probably should make some money, so we decided instead to go to Russia. I arrived with only some Hawaiian shirts, and it was the freezing middle of the winter. The entire first month we were there was only 4 hours of sunlight. Total. Nobody smiled. I spoke about 10 words of Russian. It was depressing. But on that first day in Russia, we started working on our businesses together. And we had the stupidest ideas. We flew to Bali in early 2020 to start a travel business. And in the airport, on the way, in my layover, they announced that COVID was a global pandemic. I decided to fly home, and we had no idea for how long. I'll never forget watching Nastya cry the whole time as my taxi drove away to the airport.
We had no idea how long we were separating for. It turned out to be 4 months. But at some point, we found a way to meet again in Turkey. We took a road trip for 2 months all over, and it felt like we were running from apocalypse. And again, we walked the Lycian Way and took these pictures just a kilometer away from where we're celebrating our wedding today.
We realized we had to make money, and we had to do it fast. In total, over the last 3 years, we started 14 different businesses and failed almost every time. Sometimes we worked 18 hours a day, desperately, stressed to the point where we didn't sleep. Honestly, I totally lost hope more than once, but we couldn't stop. Because that would mean I would have to go back to the United States, we would be separated, and I don't believe in long-distance relationships.
At some point, we were tricked by the manager we hired, who stole all our money. We ended up thousands of dollars in debt, and we were living on the beach in Mexico with $12 in both of our bank accounts.
At another point, we spent almost all our money to fly to Bali, and we only had $500 when we arrived, so we ate chicken and rice for every meal for months. Failing is really hard, especially when you don't have any money and you have to stay in dirty hostels all the time. But even though we were living on $10 a day, Nastya still encouraged me to start making YouTube videos. I had been talking for years about how it was my dream. And even though my first videos were so cringe and awful that I've since hidden them so you can't watch them, Nastya didn't give up on me. She kept pushing me harder and harder to try new things, and I owe a lot of my creativity to her. She came up with most of the ideas for my first videos and pushed me in the right direction.
And Thomas supported my idea to launch my online courses. It is so scary to start your own projects, and without Thomas, I could have not gotten to the success I have now.
I guess that's the truest test of love. To support each other when times are hard. And as soon as I had enough money for a ring, I proposed in Australia on the most beautiful beach in the world.
And this is why we're all here in Turkey today. We cannot believe that you all flew here from around the world.
I feel unbelievably lucky that we have such an amazing family and friends. Let's make this an unforgettable day together.